Hey guys, welcome to this session. My name is Ram, and today we'll be learning about Linux. So, guys, this session has been brought to you by Great Learning. So, I hope you guys are interested to learn today's topic, that is Linux file systems. Now, guys, before we do begin, I want to make sure that you guys can hear me and you can see the screen properly. Also, my secondary screen is not working. Just give me a second to just configure that so I can watch your chat also. Yeah, that is a very important part of our discussion where I need to make sure that, I can see what you guys are saying because that is a very essential part of our session, right? So here's what. Give me just 2 seconds and let me just configure my secondary screen so I can see your chat. All right, so it's up and running. Now we can start talking about our session. So, guys, let us begin. All right, so before I do begin, I want to show you guys something about great learning. So, guys, here at Great Learning, we come up with something called Great Learning Academy. Go ahead and type Great Learning Academy in your Google search bar. And the first link you see, right, just click on it. So here we're basically providing free courses to everyone. Now there's no catch behind this. There's no nothing behind this. I know I bring it up because I want to make sure that you guys understand that this is something that we have come up as something to give back to the community, right? You guys are awesome. We love you and we want to do the best thing for you. So we have come with something called Great Learning Academy, where you have a lot of courses, more than 80 plus courses that are completely free. You don't have to pay anything and you still get a certificate that is certified by Great Learning. So just scroll down, you'll see there's a lot of different things. For college students, we have something, and you can see the learning collaborations we have with, and these are the live sessions, the upcoming live sessions. So as you guys can see, this is one of the live sessions, right? So Linux file systems. So similarly, if you just come down, you can see all the courses there are. We have a lot of courses, English courses, if you're into English, digital marketing courses, graphic design, and a lot of different things. We have data science. Now, data science is something we excel at, and I definitely recommend checking out our data science courses because they're awesome, right? And I would also recommend you guys checking out IT and software because I know a lot of you are interested in this particular field. That's why you're watching this session because Linux is a part of this. Linux administration and handling Linux is very important when you're working in the software development industry. So IT and software is something again I would recommend, and we have a intro to Linux course that you guys would definitely enjoy over here. And please go ahead and check that out. And we have even more things. If you're into designing, we have that also. So just go ahead and type whatever you want over here. Just type introduction and you'll see whatever you want, right? So like cybersecurity in Hindi or digital marketing Hindi or graphic design in Photoshop. All right. So with that out of the way, let me open the chat and see what you guys are saying. Yes, yes, yes. We have a lot of yeses. People are saying they can hear my voice, which is awesome. So let's see who's there for my session today. So we have Priyadarshi. All right. So hi Priyadarshi. Hi Pratiksha. Hi IT Knowledge. I know that's not your real name, but still. Naveen Kumar is there. Risaba is there. Vamsi, Gaurav, Ranjit, and Adil, Santosh. We have a lot of different people, coming to watch this session. Now, I know Linux isn't something that, you guys are very interested in, like, as in general audience is not interested in. When I say you, I meant a general you. But you guys, that is the audience, you're watching this, so you want to understand more about Linux. Now, we have had other sessions on Linux. So if you're a beginner, please go ahead and let me know in the chat. Because before I begin, I want to know how many of you guys know about Linux and how many of you do not know about Linux, because I don't want to proceed knowing that you guys don't know anything, right? Till you guys give me that answer, I want to answer one of the questions so that one of the audience member is asking. Santosh is asking how to become an ethical hacker or how to start a hacking in beginner. So, Santosh, the first thing I would recommend is use the free resources you have. There are a lot of free resources available online. You can go ahead and use them. Understand what hacking is. It is not very simple. It's not a very simple thing, and it requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of things to know before you get into it, right? So, Santosh, I would definitely recommend going and checking out one of our courses if you want. You can go ahead and check them out. If you're into Hindi, we have courses for that also, right? And again, if you are not into that sort of thing, that's totally fine. Just look for all the free resources there are on the internet. Internet is your abode. Use it for yourself, right? And you said how to start hacking. Now, there's one thing that I know that I can give you. I'm not a expert in ethical hacking and cybersecurity and all that stuff. I would recommend starting Kali though. Kali is an amazing Linux operating system that is used specifically for security testing purposes. So you can install Kali in VirtualBox and start working with it, and use tools like Hydra and try to mess around with things. Now, do it legally and don't mess around with other people's and corporate stuff. That is definitely not something you should be doing. If you can get mentorship, that is awesome. That definitely helps. All right, so let's come back. That is diverting. And I want to see what my audience is saying. So they are saying, yes, I'm a beginner. I'm a beginner. I don't know Linux. I have a little bit of knowledge. So Shekhar is saying that he has a little bit of knowledge on Linux environment. So I see that you do know about Linux, but not exactly a lot about it. It's all right. Everyone needs to start somewhere, and not everyone knows about everything, right? So this will be a revision for you, what I'm going to do. And for rest of you guys, this will be a good idea of what Linux is, right? So let me begin with this session. So guys, today's agenda is basically me giving you a brief intro about Linux, and then we move on to discuss file systems. So today's topic is actually very concentrated on file systems. So that's how I've developed the storyline for us today, where we will be discussing about file systems in Linux. Now, as a beginner, it definitely helps to know that. But as a beginner, you also would want to know all the commands and everything, right? So I'll let you guys know where you can, go to look for these kind of commands that help you out. All right, so let us begin this session. So first, I'm going to go through some theory, and then we're going to do practical stuff. All right, so let's begin. So Linux, right? What is an operating system? So that is the main question we need to ask ourselves when we're talking about Linux. What is an operating system? An operating system, it is a user interface. That is the best way I can put it. It's something that allows us to talk to our machines. The laptop I'm using to teach you guys, the mobile phones you guys are using to listen to what I'm talking about, all of them have operating systems, right? These are hardware machines, and they run a lot of different things. They run PowerPoint presentations, they run YouTube, they run WhatsApp, they run desktops, they run music players, they run browsers, they run a lot of different things. So how do you make one machine run all of these different things, right? That is the question. The answer is you use an operating system. So the operating system basically acts as an interface between our hardware and us. If you want to run any application, it may be a general application, right? To do that, we use the help of an operating system to acquire the resources from the hardware, because the hardware is designed in such a way that it provides resources, but it does not know how to distribute those resources. As in, it does not know it by itself, and it does not know where to give them. All of that, all of the management, all of the interaction process, that is done by the operating system. So let's say we have a user who wants to run a certain application. So what he will do is he will basically start that application with the help of an operating system. So the operating system will basically take care of all the behind the scenes kind of things. Like it will manage the resources that are needed to run this application. It will manage the memory allocation needed to run certain variables in this application. It will do all those processes with the help of the hardware. And you have different kinds of operating systems. You have Windows operating system that I'm using. You have Linux operating systems, Linux based operating systems, and you have mobile operating systems like Android, and iOS, and then on laptops again or PCs you have Windows, you have Linux-based operating systems, and you have Mac OS, you have Unix, you have a lot of different things, right? So these operating systems basically help give us a interface for us to utilize certain resources. Yeah, I hope that is pretty clear for you what an operating system is. All right. So let's move on from this. Now let's discuss what is Linux. Now, whatever someone may tell you, Linux is not exactly the operating system. It is always Linux based operating systems. So Linux is a kernel over here. It is a kernel that is in part of a Linux based operating system. So when we talk about Ubuntu, when we talk about Kali Linux, or when we talk about RHEL, or when we talk about CentOS, these are all Linux based operating systems. They use the Linux kernel, right? So what is this kernel? So it this kernel is basically it is the core part of the operating system that does all of the managing. It has all the driver management where it runs all. It understands what devices are being used in the system, and it manages the drivers that are required to understand those devices. It does all of the resource management. It does all the memory management. So all the management processes and scheduling the processes, all of that work is done by the kernel. So kernel does all the heavy work and leg work. So that is what a kernel does. Now Linux is also a kernel in this scenario, right? So a lot of different operating systems utilize Linux as their kernel. Now this is generally for PCs and laptops, but even in the mobile environment, right? So, how many of you guys know what is Android based on? Tell me. Go ahead and tell me in the chat what is Android operating system based on. I want to know if you guys know this. If you guys know this, then I'll be really happy. But if you don't know this, I'll still be happy because I just want to know how many of you know what is the Android OS based on. If you're smart enough, you can guess it straight away. So we have the first answer coming from Shweta Mahajan, who is saying that it is Linux. And you're totally right. It is Linux. Linux is what is being used in the background of Android. So you can see Linux is used in a lot of different places. Now, Linux is the kernel that Android has heavily modified, Google has heavily modified and is using in the Android operating system. But it still serves that purpose of, Linux is such a ubiquitous thing that is being used everywhere, right? It's used almost in a lot of different places, right? So you can always compare Linux based operating systems to all the other based operating systems too, like your Windows operating system and even your Mac operating system. So that what is Linux? It is a kernel that is used in a lot of Linux based operating systems. So what is so great about Linux, right? So before we talk about what is so great about Linux, let's talk about a little bit about the history. Now, I will go past this a little faster because I know some of you want to get to the file systems part, right? So Linux was developed by a person called Linus Torvald back in 1991. So in the 90s, Linux is something that came up recently. You might think it came in the 60s or something. No, Linux came in the 90s. Now I'm a little older, so maybe 90s is still like close by for me. So it may not be close by for a lot of you, right? So it's been how many years? It's been I think it's been 29 years. Damn, that is a lot of time. 1991. So anyway, so Linus came up with Linux in 30 years ago. And why did he come up with it? So he came up with it because he wanted something that looked like Unix and behaved like Unix. Now, do not get confused. Unix and Linux, they're totally different. This Linux starts with L and Unix starts with U. All right? Now, that's not the only difference. There are a lot of differences, but this is one of the difference that is there. All right? So Linus came up with Linux because he wanted to emulate what he saw in Unix. He really liked the Unix operating system and he wanted to develop the same design philosophy and the same working philosophy, right, in his own operating system. So he came up with Linux because Unix was a paid operating system, whereas what he wanted was something open source. So he wanted to add something new That was the idea of open sourcing everything, making sure that people get things for free. And that's why he wanted to create Linux. And also because he wanted to tell people that he could create a kernel from scratch, right? All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about benefits of using Linux. Now, there are a lot of benefits. Let me just list them down and we will go through them one by one. All right, so let's talk about the first benefit, that it is open source. So when it means that it is open source, then that means the licensing, right? It generally is not something you pay for. Like a lot of different operating systems. If you talk about Windows, now Windows 10 was free a few years back, but it became paid again, right? So that is again not a status of that. The status of the software is not that it is open source. But if you talk about something like Linux, like Ubuntu is open source. You can take Ubuntu and you can use it for your own purpose. You can modify it, you can do whatever you want with it. And if there are certain rights, if there are certain things in the licensing that tell you that you can even redistribute it, then you can redistribute it also. So being an open source software is really awesome because no one has to pay for it. And paying generally, not being able to pay is it's a problem a lot of people have. Like you, me, we don't have a lot of money to buy an operating system itself. It can cost a lot of money, right? So we would prefer using open source systems unless somebody else is providing. So for my Windows system, I got it from someone, so I did not pay for it by myself. But the Linux operating system I have on my other laptop, that is completely free. I did not have to ask anyone for that. So it's open source. Now let's talk about high flexibility. So that means high flexibility and high configurability actually go together, in which you're trying to talk about how you can shape your Linux operating system according to how you want it. If you want it to do certain things, you can go ahead and do it. Take your Linux operating system and make all the changes you want. Set up certain firewalls, make sure that only certain ports are open so that you know where to access it from and not everyone else knows it, and make sure that only a certain IP can access it, and you can make all those configurations without any troubles. So that's one of the most amazing things about Linux, is that you can change it to your specification to the dot. You cannot do that with your other operating systems. Windows and Mac are managed experiences. When I say managed experiences, that means that the configuration you can make in them isn't really that great. It's not that great, seriously. You have to do a lot of workarounds. Even Windows has a lot of configurations. It's more than Mac, but it's still not as good as Linux, right? So that is your highly flexible and highly configurable part. Now, lightweight. So Linux operating systems are generally very lightweight. So if you compare Windows image versus a Linux-based operating systems image, you'll always see that the Windows-based image is more heavy. Like it might be 10 GB, might be 11 GB. But Ubuntu or whatever it is, Arch Linux, if you're using that, then it's going to be lightweight, like 1 GB, 2 GB, or 3 GB, right? So it's very preferred for development environments. So if you want to do software development and you want to have a production environment, so you would actually go with Linux, right? But that is again based on your requirements. You might even go for Windows if you want to. Then fewer malware. Now the thing is, why does it have fewer malware? So the thing is that people don't use Linux that much. Now I wish that could change. I really want you guys to start using Linux today itself. But I know that it's very difficult to get into, and not every casual person can do it. Or rather, it does not. It's not for everyone. Like it might be for people like us, right, who want to learn more about these kind of things, but might not be for a stock exchange person who just wants to use a Mac OS operating system to do whatever work he wants to do, right? So in that scenario, you can see that how Linux is used only by a specific population of our world. Only like 1-2% of people use Linux. So the thing is that people develop lesser malware for it. If less number of people use it, you prepare less number of malwares for it. So that's why I say fewer malware. And again, it's highly flexible, so you can change it very easily. So since you can change it very easily, there's no proper standard. That means that if one malware works for a certain system, it might not work for your system because you've changed it to your specification. And again, it's awesome for development, as I had told you guys earlier. Now let's scroll through these benefits also. I want to say it's stable. It has a large community, and the performance it gives is freaking awesome. Like stable means, again, it's lightweight. It does not crash very easily, but that again can depend on how you're using it. And it has a very large community. That means that a lot of people are using it, and a lot of people contributing to it. So you always look for things that have large communities, because you can always interact with people. They'll help you out. So like what we are doing right now, right? We are talking to each other. So like Mayank is telling me that he's saying that let's discuss something technical. So that is us talking to each other. That is a community we're forming, right? So we form a community and we contribute, discuss ideas and exchange that. So always look for this. And performance is very important. Always, Linux gives us very awesome performance, especially in the development part again. So these are the benefits of Linux. Now let's go to Linux versus Unix. So if you guys think I'm going a little fast, it's because I want to cover these topics fast, and I want to head to our main thing. Okay, main dish course. So if you have any doubts, please leave them in the end in the chat. I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. So Linux versus Unix. Again, I told you guys Linux and Unix are not the same. A lot of times people get confused. I used to get confused. I'm telling you, I used to get confused a lot of these times. That what is the difference between Linux and Unix? I'm getting confused. Somebody tell me. So no one told me. So I had to sit down and find it out by myself. So, but I'm telling you guys. So the difference between Linux and Unix is that Unix is the granddaddy of all operating systems. It was created back in the 70s by Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie. These people are very awesome. They're very smart. They came up with the Unix operating system. It was used for a lot of different big PCs back then, all the room-sized PCs and stuff. And it influenced the development for a lot of popular operating systems like Mac, Solaris, or AIX. Now, you might know AIX or Solaris and even Mac, right? So Mac OS is basically a Unix-based operating system. So Linux is Unix-like. So emphasis on Unix-like. It is not Unix, it is Unix-like. So it emulates the behavior and the design principles of Unix, but it is not the same thing. If you look at the source codes of both the things, they're not the same. So what Linus did, the person who made Linux, he actually looked at what Unix did, and he just formulated the source code in his mind, and he wrote all of the kernel, the Linux kernel, from scratch. He is that awesome that he did it from scratch, right? And Unix is a paid operating system, whereas most Linux-based operating systems are open source software, right? You have exceptions even in this scenario, like Red Hat Enterprise Linux is one example that it is a paid software. You have to pay for it. But again, most of the Linux is open source, right? So Unix is a complete operating system, whereas Linux is just a kernel. So again, Unix is a proper operating system, whereas Linux is just a kernel that you use with different packages to form operating systems. So Ubuntu versus CentOS, right? Ubuntu has certain packages that are used in Ubuntu. Maybe the package manager that is used in Ubuntu is a Debian package manager, right? Whereas in CentOS, it is RPM. That is your, I forgot the full form for it. But anyways, you can see that you're using different package managers there. So that's how you have different Linux operating systems. They change the kernel a little bit, and they have different repositories and packages. There's a lot of different Linux distros out there. Now, generally, you call the Linux operating systems distros. It's a very good buzzword. If you want to, impress your friends, you can be like, yeah, I use Ubuntu distro instead of saying distribution. It's pretty cool. So I can show you guys. Here are all the different distros. Now, these are the distros I have knowledge about. So you have Fedora, you have Elementary OS. This is really awesome. It's basically Ubuntu, but it has the skin of Mac. So I want you guys to check this out. It's pretty awesome. And if you're on Twitter, give these guys a hit. They always love people coming and, asking them about Elementary. And we have Alpine. Alpine is really awesome because it is very lightweight. It has a specific use case. You might not use it for everyday purposes, but it's there. Then you have Arch Linux. A lot of hipsters use Arch Linux. One of my friends uses Arch Linux, and I always tell him that, why do you use it? And he's like, it's awesome. That's there. Then Red Hat again, and you have CentOS, and you have OpenSUSE, and you have even more number of distributions that, they're uncountable numbers, right? I cannot go into all of them, but just giving you all the more popular ones like Ubuntu, CentOS, Arch, Red Hat, Fedora, Alpine, etc., right? All right, so let's talk about the architecture and components. Now, I quickly glaze through this. Again, the same reason. So you guys can see there's the hardware, there's the kernel, there's the shell and application. Hardware is the one that provides us the resources, that is your RAM, the physical hard drive, and all of that. And kernel is the one that is doing all the managing, where it is taking the resources and distributing them for all the applications there are. So that is the application layer. And then there is a shell layer. So shell layer is basically the thing that you use to interact with the kernel. So this can be your terminal, or this can be your GUI also, graphical user interface, right? So the shell is basically where you put in the commands, like the terminal where you go ahead and tell, you type in the command, listen Linux, I want to install Git. So you'll go ahead and tell that command. Linux will kernel will understand the command and will give you the result. Where it'll check the package manager. It'll tell the package manager, please find git for RAM, and it'll find the package manager and it will give it to you, and you can download it and you can run the git application then. That's the architecture. If you look at the components, here are all the components. All right, so you guys can see again the hardware is there and the kernel is here. Inside of the kernel, you have schedulers that schedule all the different jobs. So in an operating system, you always have job scheduling where there are priority-based queues where you have certain jobs to be executed on certain times, and you need to schedule those certain jobs. So the kernel does that. Then the file system is there. This is basically the storage thing. Like you have the C drive, and inside the C drive, you have my computer and all those things, right? So that is again your part of your file system. Like you have in Windows, you have in Ubuntu and other Linux operating system also. Then the security of configurations, then the network configurations, and the driver configurations and management, all of that. And in the other packages, you have system libraries. These are the libraries that are used to run certain functions. The system software, this can be any software that comes installed with your Linux that is there in the system, and the user processes. So these are the things that you run, and these are the processes that you run. Okay. All right, so basic concepts again. There's the kernel. I've told you guys about the kernel. I've told you about the shell, and file system is something we will delve into a little bit more deep. Then there's a package manager. Package manager is something that basically allows us to download and manage packages from the internet or from wherever you have assigned it to. If you want to install Git again, then you install Git using the package manager. Then you have users. So even in Linux, you have users like you have in Windows, where you have administrators and you have other users. So it's a little different. In you call administrators in Linux root users, right? And you call all of the normal users, you can call them whatever you want, right? So you have different user groups, and you have the root user. Root user is basically your administrator. He has all the privileges and he can do whatever he wants, right? So he's like the big daddy of everyone. And then the processes, where you have a lot of processes, you have process IDs to identify them, and a lot of different things, right? So now let's move on to talk about Linux file system. All right, so before I start talking about the file system, I actually want to open up Ubuntu because that's how you guys will understand. It's a more practical thing. I think it's better if you guys look at it. All right, so till the before I start, I want to see what you guys are saying because I haven't looked at the chat, and I really should be looking at the chat also. All right, so please give. So okay, Devendra. So okay, sorry, wrong. I did not pronounce it properly. It is Deva Devara Devarakonda is asking. Please give list of commands which you are used in Linux frequently. Right. So Himaja. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your first name. For that, I would recommend checking out the session that we have done on Linux commands. Go ahead and type Great Learning and Essential Linux Commands. I've covered a lot of commands. I've covered like, I think maybe 20 to 25 commands that you need to know. And I go into detail about each of those commands. They're very important and they will definitely get to help you started. In this video, I will not be going into a lot of the details about all the commands we're using. I'll be talking to you about the file system, which is again important. All right. So now let's see what other things people are saying. Again, is saying I'm having a bit of experience, more than 2 years. So again, you have a lot of experience in Linux, more than 2 years. Then this is basically a revision for you. If you see anything wrong that I've said, please go ahead and point it out. I don't want it to be the case where I say wrong things and you guys don't point it out. Okay. This is a learning experience for me also. There are definitely going to be people who are more experienced than me who are going to teach me. So please go ahead and let me know. Bullish Trade is asking why is Linux important. Linux is important in certain scenarios. If you don't think it is important, then maybe it is not for you, or maybe you've not been exposed to that. So Linux is used in a lot of different places. It is open source. It is used in software development. It is used for securing a lot of different things. That's the extent of it. Why I can tell you why Linux is important. I'm not here to sell Linux exactly. I'm just here to tell you guys about it. If you do not what do you say? So it's subjective to say. Like for one person it may be important, for one person it may not be important. Depends on your requirements. If you want to use something that is not a managed experience, where you want to make sure that you can configure every small detail, then Linux is important for you. Santosh is asking, where should I start Linux basics? This is a good video, but we have a Linux, another session on Linux. Go ahead and type Great Learning Linux, and you can go ahead and check that out. Okay, Vishnu is asking, I keep getting an error. The package needs to reinstall, but it is not getting archived for it in the Linux Mint. So I am not exactly sure how to use Linux Mint, but you are saying that you're getting an error in the package that you need to reinstall, but is not getting archive for it. You'll need to extrapolate that a little bit on that, Vishnu, so I can help you out. I cannot impromptu help you out in this situation. I need a lot more details in that. Okay, so people are saying Linux kernel, Java, Android environment. It is based on microkernel. Yes, I think this is a monolithic kernel. Depends. R. Kumar saying he's loved my voice. Thank you, Kumbhar. Thank you. Why is Linux when we can install Python 3, but it shows default as Python 2 version? All right, that is a good question. Himanshu, you asked a good question. So he asks, so if I install Python 3, why does it show the default as Python 2? So even in Windows, sometimes you can have that problem. So by default, you might already have a Python that is installed in your Linux instance, and the environment variable, right? So environment variables are something that allow you to use certain commands anywhere in the system. Even in Windows, sometimes when you want to use certain software, the commands that come with the software. So let's say you want to use Splunk. Splunk is a tool. You need to tell your Windows system that I want to use Splunk commands on CMD. So you will go to the environment variables and you will mention the pathway to the directory where all the commands are stored. Similarly, why you when you install Python 3, why it showed Python 2 as default was because Python 2 was already as the default. So you need to go ahead and change that to Python 3, right? You can either remove Python 2 and try with Python 3. It depends. There are a lot of solutions for that. I would recommend you Google it. There are a lot of steps. People explain it. Difference between Linux and Ubuntu. Linux is not an operating system. It's a kernel. You use it in Ubuntu, right? Ubuntu has Linux in it, right? So yes, bullish trader is exactly right. Ubuntu is like one version of Linux where it is using Linux. Hey, thank you, General Subra Gaming. You are helping us get the stream comes in recommendation. Yeah, guys, please go ahead and like this stream. It always really helps us out. We want to reach out to more people who will learn, right? More people who learn and more people who get to know about this, right? So please go ahead and give me that like in the in the session. It really helps. It truly does help. It helps YouTube algorithm recognize the stream and it shares it with a lot of different people. All right, so we have more questions coming in. I really like this that a lot of people are asking a lot of questions. Yes, thank you, Mayank. Red Hat Package Manager, RPM. And yes, Ubuntu is a flavor of Linux. Thank you, Mayank, again. So you have different flavors. Can be Ubuntu, CentOS, whatever. Mayank, I'm really happy that you're helping out in the chat and helping talking to everyone. That is important. We need to maintain a community where we help each other out. That is very important, especially in today's day and age. Please make sure that you help everyone out. There's no amount of gatekeeping. You should not be doing any kind of gatekeeping. That if you don't know, you should not come up. You should help people out. All right, so this is a good question. Why is Mac preferred over Linux in the industry? It is something of a habit, or Mac OS has an upper hand. So it comes to personal, this thing. What do you say? Preference. See, I'll tell you something. Even in Mac, right? I say that it's a managed experience, but it does provide us the tools to develop software easily. You will not be using Mac OS as your server of choice when you are deploying a software, right? That is not what you'll be doing it, but you will be using Mac OS to develop the software. That is, write the software, right? Create the code. That kind of process you will be doing with this thing. Just hold on a second, guys. So that kind of stuff you will be doing this thing. you'll be using macOS. Now, why is it preferred in the industry? Well, from my knowledge, from what I've heard from my friends who are working as software developers, Mac is just really awesome to use, man. So people just love using Mac. Oh, in that case, it's just an awesome experience. You don't have to worry about a lot of different things in when you're using Mac. Now, to go into detail, I want to get an expert because I can't just simply rant on. It's just an assumption that I'm making. So let's move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's it. Now let's move on to Linux file system, right? If you guys have any questions, let's go ahead and put them in the chat again. We'll take another break like this and we'll talk about it. Okay. So now let me do something. Actually, guys, I wanted to show you how to do it in VirtualBox, but it's giving me again an issue. I don't know why. It worked perfectly fine in our first session. Now again, it's giving me an issue, and I deleted the image by mistake. Now I can't find it. So, I don't think we can do it with VirtualBox. So I've come up with a solution for this again. So we'll be using a cloud service. So I'm using Amazon. We'll be launching a virtual machine from Amazon, and I'll be launching an Ubuntu virtual machine. So at least I can show you guys the file system in that. I won't be able to show you the GUI. There's a graphical user interface, but I have a workaround for that. Okay, I'll show you guys. I'm using the free tier. You guys also, if you're following me, go to choose AMI, choose Ubuntu Server 18.0. What is the latest version? And T2.micro is good enough. It's free tier. We don't have to pay for it. Storage, everything is default. Everything is default. Even security groups are not connecting it to anything, so I'll leave it as default. Okay. No. We need to connect to it. We do need to connect to it. All right. But it's port 22 by default. I think it shouldn't have been a problem. Thank you, Sushil, by asking him to check what version you're using Python. Type Python 3 version. That will help you get more detail about what kind of Python installation you've done on your system. Okay. Let's name this Ubuntu. All right, so I have a virtual machine that I've launched on AWS's servers. So I'm not using my own hardware. I'm using AWS's hardware, and I've launched a virtual machine on their server. Right. So let me just open up my SSH client. I'm a little lazy, so I'm not going to type in the SSH command. I'm going to use the SSH client. This way, I just have to put in the IP. Yes. Login as Ubuntu. Alrighty, so we are here. Now I want to explain about the file system. So what is the file system? Guys, go ahead and tell me in the chat what a file system is. I want to truly know what you guys understand about a file system. I know what a file system is. Yeah, Mike, you're right. I can remote connect to the public IP, and I should not be showing you the IP, guys. You can connect it to it also. No, but you don't have the private key, so you cannot connect. Ha 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 ha. I win. Anyway, so guys, go ahead and tell me what is this thing. What is the file system? I want to know from you guys what a file system is. Let's see what the chat has to say. I do not really like this lag. Yes, the first answer comes in. Ritesh is saying organization mechanism of files. You are right. It is that, but it's a little jargony. Organization mechanism. So it's basically used to organize our files, right? It's kind of like that. Yeah, Mike is also saying it's a file structure. It's a directory list. So it is actually the file structure, right? So it is file systems are basically how your directories are laid out. So what is a directory in this case? Now I know a lot of you are beginners, so I want to go. Let me open my computer, this PC. Yeah. So a file system is basically when you come to Windows, right? Let's say you have let's say you have opened up your local directory, right? So this navigation bar you see over here, if I click on it, you can see that it says C, right? So now let me go into program files, right? If you go to program files, and what if I go into Google, right? And you can see that the directory is changing. I'm going to the Google folder. So I've gone to the Google folder over here. But if I click on the navigation bar, it gives me this particular address. So this is my file, this is my directory. So I am moving from C directory inside. I'm moving C to program files to Google, right? So this is basically my directory. So basically directories and folders are the same thing. They're generally the same thing. It's just that, when the graphical user interface became more apparent, people started calling these folders instead. And for casual users, folder is much better to understand than, directories. I think that is pretty obvious. But folders are generally just your directories. Now I can go into Chrome. Chrome is inside my Google, and Google is inside program files, and it is inside my C drive, right? Similarly, even in Linux and Ubuntu, where whatever you're using, any kind of Linux, you have a certain file structure where you have directories, right? So in Linux, generally the thing is you have the main directory. Let's go to the main directory. So I'm going to use the cd command. If you guys don't know what the cd command is, it basically allows us to traverse through our directories in the terminal. This is the terminal. Okay, so this is the terminal. If I go to cd slash, right, you can see that it's changed from this to this. Now, if I do the pwd command, which again, if you check out my previous session, it tells us the current directory. So this is the current directory. Now, this is the root directory, but do not confuse yourself with the other root directory. So when I say this is the root directory, this is the special root directory. For your guys' sakes, I'm gonna call it special root directory. So this is the location where everything is going to be stored. Whatever you do in the system, right? Whatever data you're storing will be in your this root directory, right? So if I do an ls, you guys can see that this is my directory. Now let's see if we can try tree over here. So what I'm doing right now is I want to show you guys the directory structure. There is a really simple um, command called it's called tree. It basically shows us the directory. Right now, let's do that. Sudo apt install not directory, tree. Okay, so this is the command to install anything. Sudo apt install and whatever package you want to install. Apt is your package manager, install is the command you're giving apt, and sudo is the super root user access. Now let's type in tree over here. Okay. That is a lot of things coming on our screen right now. I hope this is sending a message to you guys that the place where we put in this command, right, is the slash root folder. This is the special root folder under which you'll have everything. Even this tree command has a lot of commands. All right, let's do that. Even this is a pretty big. All right, so this is not that big though. Now we just listed the directories. We have not listed any of the files. So the tree command basically helps us to, check out all of the. All right, so it's gone beyond the limit. Let me just try that again. Let's show another better command. Let me just scroll down. Du-du-du. All right, so let's do that. All right, so okay, so I hope you guys get my point. Okay, I'll show you how to use this command later. I hope you guys get my point. It's just that The R is the special directory where you have everything. So if this is the special root directory where you have everything in the files directory, like everything that is stored in your Linux system will be under here. Okay, so if I do ls over here, you can see that we have the bin folder, the dev folder, the home folder, lib32, media, opt, root, and all of these are your main folders that are there generally in your system, right? So I want to go through these systems one by one. What are these what are these directories do? So this is like going to your local C drive and checking out what is there over here. Like, you have Windows, you have users, you have temp, program data, program files, and perf logs, and a lot of different things like mini G's, compiler, and a lot of different things. This is your main thing where your whole operating system is stored, right? Similarly, even the whole operating system, or let's say the kernel, much better way to say it, is stored over here, right? So let's go through these one by one. Now, these aren't all of them. I've used the ls command, so lists only the visible files. If I do ls-a, we can see all the invisible ones also, but I think everything's visible mostly. All right, so we've talked about the root directory that we are in right now. Let's talk about the bin directory. So bin directory is basically the place where you have all of your easy commands that you use for a lot of different purposes, like the ls command, right? Ls is one of the commands that you use a lot, and it is in your bin directory. So a lot of these commands are basically very important but easy to use commands, like your cd command, your ls command. All of this is stored in your bin directory. Okay, so your bin directory basically stores all of your important commands. Now if you come back and if I do an ls again, let's go to boot directory. So we have the wait 1 second. Let me just check where the boot directory is. Yes, this is the boot directory. So boot directory is basically where where the kernels are, the boot loaders are, that allow that basically give the information to the operating system about what has to happen when the system starts up, when it boots up. Whenever you're booting up your own Windows system, you see a lot of boot messages coming up, right? So even in that location, even in that scenario, a bootloader is being used to provide the system with certain details that allow to understand what is to happen during the starting of the whole process. So you have a lot of boot kernels that basically allow you to basically allow the system to start up, right? So this is that. So boot is basically contains all the bootloader files, right? Okay. Now let's come out and let's talk about another directory. So now let's talk about the dev directory. So dev directory is basically where you store all of your important files, like all your device files. So if I go into dev, if I do an ls, you guys can see all of the device files are over here. Okay, so whatever device you're using, there are certain files related to that. You have that in the dev folder. Now let me come out of here. We won't be using the dev folder that much. Now I want to talk about a very important folder, that is the etc folder that you guys will be seeing a lot of work with. Okay, so etc folder is basically the folder where all the configurations are. This is like a program files folder. Like if we come back to Windows, this is the program files folder, right, where you have all the important apps that you downloaded, like Google Chrome and whatever you've installed, right? Similarly, even in the etc folder, you'll have a lot of the important core system operating this thing uh, softwares, and like your Vim is a note editor, right? And you have Nano also over here, which is an editor. All of these are softwares, so they have certain libraries and certain commands that you use with them. So all of them are stored within here, and there's certain configuration files also. So you can see all the configuration files, right, which tell us the settings of all the things. They're also stored over here. So let me show you an example. Let's head inside Nano. All right, so let me do, is Nano even here? Should be here. All right, so let's head inside that. All right, so we cannot head inside it. So I cannot show you if there are any configuration files. So let's just open any of these configuration files. Now remember, don't change any of these configuration files because they may be important and you do not know about them. So let's go inside host.configuration file. Now this is directory is not writable. Okay. We do not have access to it, I think. Sudo cat and let's do the host. All right, so when I open this up, you can see that this is the configuration over here. Now there's nothing inside of this because there are no hosts mentioned inside of that the system has to recognize. That's why we don't have it, but we can go ahead and add them using the super user access. Now in etc you need super user access for anything because this is an important folder, so making any configuration changes requires you to put in the password and username, password basically, for your root access. But since I'm using the virtual machine, it's not asking me because there's no proper password or such thing in this. Okay. All right, so it's basically etc is the folder where you have all the core system configurations, and generally try not to make any changes if you do not know about it. That is something I'll tell you for everything. Don't make any changes for anywhere if you do not know about it properly. Please search about it, please think about it, and only then go ahead and make those changes. Otherwise, you might ruin your system. Now let's go to home. Home is basically for all of your personal things, like if you have the different directory, right? So Ubuntu is my username. Here you can see the Ubuntu is the user. So if I head inside Ubuntu, actually let's use the tree command here. So actually, okay, let me come back. No, okay, we cannot use that. So Ubuntu, there's nothing inside Ubuntu. That's why it's not showing us anything. Yeah. So here in Ubuntu, you guys can see this is basically where you store. So here is basically where you store all of your personal files and everything, like how you would store it on your desktop, or if you want to store in your own folder, you'll create your own folder and everything in your personal in home. Okay. All right. So that is your home folder. Now then there is the lib folder. Also, your home folder will have the desktop and all. Inside this Ubuntu, there's no desktop, but generally you'll have a desktop also inside this. Okay. So let me open the lib folder. So the lib folder is basically the folder that holds all the library files and all the binaries that you can use, right? So all the certain libraries that your system needs, right? All of those are located in your lib folder. My God, it gives this error so many times. Okay, we are in the home directory. That's why it's giving us this issue. Now, if I just head to the root again and we'll put in the command again. If I do an ls, you can see in the library folders, you have a lot of different libraries that are used for different purposes, right? So it generally holds all those file libraries that are needed for your system to run, right? So let's come out of it. Let's talk about the media folder. So in some systems, you'll see that you have a CD-ROM folder also. Now the CD-ROM folder is a legacy folder. It used to be there for like CD drives and all, right? It's not used that much of a lot, and now instead we use the media this thing directory for anything you mount. So if we head into media, you can see that if I do an ls, okay, there's nothing here, but if we had an operating system, like an actual operating system, you'll see like things like USB and all that. If you want to connect a USB, you'll be connecting it, and it will be appearing over here. So basically, when you it's analog and it's analogous to whenever you plug in a USB, right, and it appears in this PC. So there'll be like another drive over here and here, whatever hard drive you're including. So that will come under media, right? So I hope that is understood. All right, so I've covered enough that we can take a small break and I'll explain the rest of them to you again. Okay, so let me see what you guys have asking. Okay, so Naveen is asking, sir, in Ubuntu older version, all the packages inbuilt, but in the newer version, we have to install. What is the reason for it? I do not know exactly what you're asking. Like all the packages inbuilt, like which packages are you talking about? So generally, there are certain packages that you can install. It can be different versions of Ubuntu have different versions of packets that come installed with it. Maybe some third-party apps that you choose to install or not. But generally, you have to install things if you want certain things. Like if you want Git and all, you'll have to install it. But this is a AWS Amazon thing, so it is its own thing, and Git is already installed. But generally, in Ubuntu, you won't have Git installed. All right, so that depends. Yes, Mayank, it's a PWD is present working directory. Okay, okay. I see that I am never supposed to print tree R recursively. Okay, thank you for future. All right, all right. V and Vim are the same. Exactly. Yeah, V and Vim are the same thing. They're basically the editor that is used. All right, so let's move on. Let's discuss all of the other things that are left. So we have the OPT thing. Now OPT is kind of like a ETC, but the thing is in OPT you install any separate proprietary software if you want. Like there's a tool called Splunk and all. If you want to install it, you can either do it in ETC, but it would be preferred if you do it in OPT. So OPT is your location, your go-to place for anything that is proprietary or separate from your normal softwares. Okay. All right. So that is your OPT. Now let's talk about, this is so many right now. All right. So let's quickly jump through all of those. Yeah. OPT is basically your optional software, right? Stuff you want to download separately. Okay, let's talk about proc. So proc is basically about all, it's the information about all the processes that are running currently. So if you want to check those out, those are in your PROC folder. Okay, and then there is something that will confuse a lot of you, that is root. Like I told you that this is the root directory, then what is this? So the difference is that this root directory is the special root directory. It has everything that you're going to be having in the system. But this root directory is the root user's information, right? So the naming convention is a little difficult. So just understand that the root directory inside the root directory is for the root user, whereas the special root directory is the one for everything, not just everyone, for everything. This is the root user's home directory. So if you're a root administrator or something, you want to put something in there, you can go ahead and put it for whatever purpose. Then you have run also. So let's not cover run right now. Let me show you the easier ones. So we have the temp. So temp is basically the folder where you have all the temporary data stored. This thing gets cleared every time you refresh your system. Then we have the slash. We should have the user also, not user, USR. My God, I can always miss that out. Yes, this is the USR. So USR is basically the place where you'll be storing. What is to say? You'll be storing like information of variables. Like if I go into user, if I do an ls, basically you have a lot of different things that are being stored over here. Like you have bin again for certain commands that you want to store. You can store them in bin. Then you have games over here. Now I'm not exactly sure about the games folder, but here bin folder you have all the user bin commands that the user can use, right? And the USR is not user, basically it is universal system resources basically. So everyone in the system can use these resources. So you have your bin and local, so you have your own separate directories within bin, that you sorry within USR that you can use. Yeah. The name is very confusing. I hope you guys didn't get confused with USR, right? This is basically for any software that you want all the people to say to. Okay, let's come out of here. All right, so let me show you other things. So that was the USR. Now I want to show you guys var. So var is basically, or var is basically a variable directory. It is for all like the logging and everything, storing certain information. So if you guys know about logs, every system produces some kind of logs, right? So this operating system produces some kind of logs whenever I do any command or anything. If I run any process, whenever any system or any software runs, right, it will produce logs. These logs are basically information about what is happening. So let's say that you played a game. So this process of you starting the game, the process of you ending the game, it will all be stored in the log, right? So if I open log, you can see that there's a lot of different log files. Since this is an Amazon VM, you can see that this is Amazon, then there's apt package managers logs, and everything is there. All right, so you have error log, you have access log, you have system logs, and everything. Okay, that is inside your var. Now inside your var, you have other things also, like your cache, your backups, your other certain libraries that you want to use. So the cache contains all the cache data from any application that you're using for any secondary memory, and you have the games also. The games thing, the games folder is not over here. I don't know why the games folder is not here in the var, but generally if you're using Ubuntu, right, you'll see a games folder also that contains all the data that you for any games that you're using. Okay. So any of you gamers out there, then you have the mail one for mail information also. All right, so let's come out of this. The lib is for your dynamic libraries. All right. So we have covered a lot. We've covered bin, dev, home, media, opt, root. We have not covered these two. So let's cover sbin and srv. So srv is basically your site specific data, which is basically served by the system. Don't worry too much about it. It's not that important for you to understand. Your sbin is basically your very important binaries that you use. Okay, so these are the binaries that generally only the person who has super user access can run. Yeah. All right. So that is your sbin. We did var, we did etc, we did lib. All right. So mount is basically the location where you temporarily mount any new systems. So mounting in this scenario is basically, kind of like having a certain, say, extra drive. So if you have C drive, F drive, and all that, right? You want to mount a certain drive, you can go ahead and if you mount a drive, you will see the information about that over here, or any file system. All right, so we did that. Now we need to do run. So in run, basically you have all of that information that it's about the system information that is been happening. So let me just open that. Right, so you have logs and everything. So over here, basically all the system information is being stored. Other than your sys logs, you have it over here in run also. This is the information about the running systems before the last time you restarted the system. Since we did not restart any system, this is basically information about whatever stuff we've done so far. Right, so SSH ID, that is when we SSH into here. So it uses the SSH D, and there is a SSD PID also. That is a process ID. All right, so we did everything. I think mostly run SRV. We did that. We did USR. All right, fine. Oh, okay. We have crossed a lot of time. Okay, guys. So now I'm just gonna take questions, and I will go ahead and end the session. Okay. Again, if you want to install Linux, you can either use VirtualBox for this, or you can go ahead and launch a virtual machine on cloud, AWS or whatever. Okay, so guys, now I will go ahead and take questions from you guys. So please ask me something. Okay, so Mayank is asking OPT contains. Sorry, I did not see that before. OPT is basically your optional software. Like if you want to install any optional software that is not an essential software, you can go ahead and put that in your OPT folder. Okay. So let's say you are installing something new, completely new, or something completely proprietary, then you can go ahead and put that in your OPT folder. So Sushil is there helping me out a lot. He's saying USR nowadays stands for user system resources. Yes, this directory contains most commands, executables, and libraries and documentation. In early days of Unix, it was the directory where the user's home directories were placed. Okay, I did not know this fact. Okay, thank you so much, Sushil. Um, so basically, your user home directory would have been in USR. which is now home. Okay, okay, okay. Did you like take this from somewhere? Anyways, thank you so much. So it originally stood for user. Yeah, it's changed. Nowadays it's user system resources. Yes. Again, the directory is reserved for all software and add-on packages that are not part of the default installation. Okay. So Mike is asking why is WSL2 in Windows C is mounted in M and T. I am not sure, Mayank. I'm not exactly sure about this. I don't know what WSL2 is, and I don't know why it is mounted. Sorry about that. You know what? I'll just note this down, and if in the next session I can come up with an answer for it, I'll go ahead and tell you. Anyway, guys, so I think that's all the questions we'll be taking since our time is up. I've gone 10 minutes extra also. Yeah, that's the thing, man. So I'll have to look into a little bit more. Here's what in the next session I'll just come up with an answer for you, and you can go ahead and ask me again. If I don't answer it in the next session, also you can hold it up to me. All right. Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. We've already crossed our time by 10 minutes, but I still enjoyed teaching you because I got to learn a lot of stuff today, man. Seriously. And I see that Mayank has come back up again. And we have a lot of recurring people that keep on coming. I really enjoy this because it's fun to interact with people that are far away, sitting far away, but we're discussing ideas, we're exchanging them, and we're really enjoying them. And again, guys, before I end this session, please go ahead and like the session. That really helps us out, and that really helps us reach out to even more people so that we can help out even more people, right? Like it, put a comment. If you have any suggestions, leave the suggestion, right? We'll try to get to it. If we can't, at least we'll read through it, right? We always read through all the comments, so do not worry about that. Okay. So, guys, again, my name is Ram. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next session.